I'm going to read from the beginning of chapter 9 from my book, Justice Gone Haywire, that is at Amazon. Justice Gone Haywire by Denise Snow. And the chapter is called The Schizophrenic Falsely Convicted as the Bike Path Rapist. And here's how the chapter starts. Short, bald, Altemio Sanchez, 48, sat in a booth with his wife, Kathleen, at the Soleil restaurant in Buffalo, New York. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, the name of the restaurant. 3 undercover detectives sat at the bar. They had instructed the restaurant's manager not to allow employees to touch items on the table the Sanchez's shared. The couple left the restaurant, leaving behind a good tip and a water glass and eating utensils Altemio Sanchez had used. Detectives gathered these items. They followed Sanchez to a bookstore at which he drank out of a coffee cup they also took when he left it behind. DNA results were back the next day, conclusively linking Sanchez to several rapes and 3 murders. Okay. Now, they found out that Altemio Sanchez was the criminal who had been known as the Bike Path Rapist. But the odd thing was that the cops believed that they had already found the Bike Path Rapist. And put him in prison. Okay. Okay, another part of my story reads, my article, it's a nonfiction. Detectives combing through old case files discovered very similar crimes before the first attack attributed to the Bike Path Rapist. They also learned something deeply unsettling about those early similar rapes. A man, Anthony Capozzi, was imprisoned for them. In 1985, Capozzi, 29, who had schizophrenia, still lived with his parents. When police came to the Capozzi house, he was certain the mistake would soon be cleared up and said to Mary Capozzi, his mother, "Ma, don't worry, I'll be back." Unfortunately, Capozzi bore a striking resemblance at the time to Altemio Sanchez. Victims picked Capozzi out of lineups as their attacker. Although Capozzi stoutly denied having attacked anyone, he readily acknowledged he suffered from a mental illness usually considered the most severe and debilitating of mental illnesses. It is not known if the jury was unduly influenced by the defendant's mental condition, but he was convicted of 2 rapes and sentenced to 11 to 35 years imprisonment. He went before the parole board 5 times. The Associated Press reports his refusal to admit to the crimes made it impossible to complete a mandatory sex offender program. His younger brother urged Capozzi to admit guilt and claim remorse to make it more likely he would be paroled. Capozzi refused to falsely confess. Okay, so investigators then interviewed Capozzi at Attica prison. Now, that meant that the investigators had basically two cases that they were investigating. They were investigating a man for a series of crimes as the bike path rapist and for several murders, and they're trying to get an innocent man out of prison.